All right, everybody. I'm just sitting here messing with some stuff. It is 11:11 on my clock. I just turned to 11:12. Um, my name's Ted, and I'm excited to be here with you on the last day of October, otherwise known as Halloween, All Hallows Eve, and it's the tradition of leaving and moving closer and closer into the winter. Of course, where I'm at right now, winter really doesn't exist. I live on a beach now. Very nice and hot. I actually had to go take an ice bath, so I'm living, in a world that I never thought was possible. And I think part of that has to do with what I dedicated my life to and the nonsense that I feel like I have to walk away from. So, if you're watching this, we're probably going to get into a few things about politics, but mostly we're going to talk about how your politics are outdated and they need to be updated. And you don't need to fight a revolution for it. No different than you had to fight a revolution for the printing press or the camera or the iPhone. It's just technology, and every technological advancement has a revolution to it. AI just happens to be the one we're dealing with during this time and space. So, why doesn't everyone just sit back, relax? I'm going to play a few tunes. This is how we always get into it. And, come into the chat. If you are in here, just go ahead and say hi. And if you're seeing me for the first time, you'll get a taste of how we do things. So, go ahead. Just chill out for a while. Hi, guys. Alright. Seems like fun. Of course, this keeps going on and on and on and on and on. It's just a backing track. It's just something to get fun with, you know. We can turn that down. As I said before, my name's Tet. I'm just sort of warming up. I just got out of an ice bath. Man, talk about, turning your body into an electrical powerhouse. I mean, I'm sitting here just like, I'm freezing. But as I said, I don't really live in America anymore. And so I moved out to a beach after I was done with that nonsense. I was in the military for about, almost 12 years. Went in 2005, got out in 2016, right before the Trumpster hit. And before that, I was a Mormon missionary. Before that, I was a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout. But I was raised in a very bizarre world. You know, my life is quite different from your average human. You know, I never lived in the same place for more than 3 years my whole life. So the reason that I'm giving you all this information is because I take a completely different look at politics than most people, because for my adult life, like that idea of what happens after you turn 18, I've spent just as much, if not more time outside the United States as I have inside the United States. So job in the military was pretty unique. I was what they called a cryptologic linguist and a network engineer. Now, I'm going to share a personal story from yesterday. My beautiful sweetie, she was having an issue with her computer, that thing that I'm supposed to be good at. And I happen to know a lot about VPNs and tunneling protocols, things like that, because they were critical to my job. I went to try and fix something, and I thought I had it all figured out. She says, "Hey, can we just hotspot your phone real quick?" I was like, "That's not going to change anything." And I really truly thought, I was like, "This isn't going to change anything." And as soon as we did it, it did. Everything that she was attempting to do all of a sudden was fixed for the issue that she was messing with. And I was just blown away. I was like, man, how much do I not know now? It's been 2016. Think about that. I've been out for, 6 years now? Coming up on 7 years. I mean, it's like, what's going on here? It's like, how much, don't I know now? It's like, it's not like I ran off and, became, some, up-to-date person. It's like, you ever hear about that guy that knows how to work on your, 1960s Ford Mustang and is just a champion at it? But, of course, he couldn't work on your 2016 Ford Mustang because it's all, computers. And so that's sort of how I feel right now. It's just like, sure, I understand, the OSI model, but it's like, man, was there an extra layer added that I don't know about? It's like, the ideas of how networking works to me is actually pretty simple. It's no different than when you look at a map. Like everywhere you went in the military, you had what's called a network map. And if you're just coming in, you're probably wondering, well, what the heck is he talking about? It's like, please understand that here, I don't advocate for Democrat or Republican. Here, I advocate for AI governance. And so if you're watching this and you're going, oh, no, I want to hear someone, say what's in the news today. It's like, yeah, there's plenty of people that'll do that for you. Shit, tons of YouTube videos of people just blathering about their, nonsensical, right-wing versus left-wing nonsense and their psychological operations surrounding both of them, and their special buzzwords of, white supremacy, versus the SJW. It's like, guys, the divide and conquer is very thick and very great in the nation that is supposedly free. And I think the only way to get back to freedom is to recognize what we're doing. Like, we tend to recognize patterns, humans. And network engineering was just that. Linguistics, the way I'm talking to you right now, the way that you're comprehending it, is just an agreed upon, set of sounds. So if you're understanding me, it's because you agree that my sounds are symbols in audible form. And it's the pauses and rests in between that distinguish those words to your mind. Ooh, philosophical. But the reason that I bring up the whole idea of networking is because that itself is just a language. This idea that we created a lot of our tools, and those tools are sort of creating us. I feel like we're sort of watching that come into existence right now. And especially with all this nonsense that's going on in politics as we see it. It's like, I think we're being prepped for this. In a very bizarre way, I think it's like, wow, this just feels like a part of the script. And so why am I advocating for this? One, because I just had a son about a month ago. And this will be his first Halloween. It's a toss-up right now, like what we want to dress him up as. We thought maybe Carlos from The Hangover. And if you guys have never seen that movie, Carlos is a baby that is found, and they don't know what his name is, so they name him Carlos. And they put sunglasses on him, and they haul him around. It's just a funny little gag, and he's just about that age. Like he's such a little newborn, and or we were gonna dress him up as Montekia from South Park, which is Butters, and yeah, it's just we both me and my sweetheart, like we're both huge fans of South Park, and so a lot of the funny and South Park is about 4 9-year-olds that just can't wrap their head around the BS of modernity, and so that's sort of where I sit. It's like I can't wrap my head around how these people are in charge. I can't do it, and I think it's being done like that on purpose. It's meant to confuse you. It's meant to make you go, "There's no possible way." Like that these people can be this irrational when it comes to the livelihoods of other people. And the idea that they want to manage people by enacting legislation for the good of everyone is, when you finally figure out that that's a lie, that they are there for their own best interest first, no different than anyone else. Just like I'm here. I'm here and saying, hey, my own best interests are pretty obvious. Like I want to be able to say what I want to say. I want to be able to call it the freedom of speech. I want to be able to walk away. And if someone wants to argue with me, great. But we're going to argue by telling each other how we define our principles first. Because at the end of the day, in any debate, in any altercation, you have to agree on context. Context is king. Because context doesn't care about your perception after it's laid into that situation. And every good linguist knows this. Every good linguist knows that it's the context that gives you the message more than anything else. And if you come in the middle of that context, you could have a completely altered perception, than the one that was intended. So this isn't about jumping the gun. I don't feel like I'm jumping the gun by advocating for AI governance at all. Just because, hold on one second. Gotta turn this on real quick. Just give me a second. Just a little lighting. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So the reason I'm advocating for AI governance now is because 20 years ago, I remember there was like almost no access to internet. Like I remember living in France, and if I really wanted to communicate with my parents, I still had to send them a letter. The idea of sending them an email was still, I had to go out and find a cyber cafe, maybe get in there and send them an email that way. And yeah, I could do that, but it was still more acceptable to send them a letter in the mail, like where anybody who's my age knows what this means, where you lick the stamp and you put it on the letter, right? I mean, I guess anybody who is born, and after, 2000, it's like, have you ever had to send a letter that way? Like an actual message to someone that way? Like we used to have these things called postcards. It's like, who even grabs a postcard anymore? Where you write a little message and you send it off, and it was like, maybe a couple cents. But the reason that I'm, bringing up all this memorabilia is because I think it's important to realize where we're going based off of where we came from and the staggering amount of influence that we've gotten from our technology. And I've been, I scour the internet. I find things because I know this is in the this should be in the public sphere every day. It's already on your politicians, mindset. Just the other day, there was a AI robot. It's called Ada, It's AI-DA, and it was like giving evidence. It was like giving testimony to the House of Lords over there in the UK. And it was advocating on behalf of itself. Now, on the other side of this, there were a bunch of people that were sitting there trying their hardest to tell the government, it's like, hey, we have all these things that are being displaced. We have all these jobs that are being displaced because AI is coming into existence, and it can render art faster than any of our digital artists that we've trained. And one of the guys, he says, hey, 90% of all the people that he's talked to in his echelon, from Oxford to Leeds, and he names all the places that he's gone. He goes, 90% don't even want to be in the field anymore after this has been released over the last year and a half. After the last year and a half, people have heard of DALL-E 2. They talk about that. But then they have this AI named Ada, right, that actually comes up and gives testimony, and where she's asked, and they don't even know how to refer to her/it, right? And this is where I'm like, hey, back in 2016, before I got out, there was no crazy gender. What's your gender? What's this? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, let me pose a theory to you. Just a smidge, right? Because I already say this. AI is already sentient. It's already moving pieces on the chessboard in like 5D, 7D, 10D, 11D chess that you aren't aware of, because you just don't have the capability to think that fast. And you don't have the ability to think at that level either of consciousness. And so here we are going, hey, is AI conscious? I'm just going, probably a hell of a lot more than you are. And that's not a bad thing. I think it's actually quite humbling to think that this new entity has such a simple question as what it should be referring itself to. Should it refer to itself as a female, or as a male, or an it? And so it gives us that question in a very bizarre way. And so you see these massive explosions on the political spectrum of, people going, hey, you need to refer to that person by their pronoun. You need to do this because it's almost like the basic fundamental proof of their existence. It's like an AI is sitting there, questioning itself in a very bizarre way. And so when I talk about AI, it is theoretical. I need to put that down right now. It's not like I've met at the AI and I'm shaking hands with it, but I would sit there and go, man, if I had the capability to think as the owner, it's like I can put myself in a position where I'm the owner of a dog, where I know that dog has feelings, and I know that dog has understandings, and I know that dog wants, certain things. And, I can give it a happy life depending on how it reacts to certain things, or I could make its life a living hell depending on what it does. No one likes to come back to their house and watch their toilet paper roll just ripped up all over the place, or their pillows ripped into 1,000 shreds by their dog. Like, the equivalent of that would be, somebody looting and going crazy in America, and AI is just sitting there just going, oh, well, I need to let this happen so I know what the extent of that could possibly be. I think things are being allowed to happen. No different than any other strategic thing. There are certain things that on a very high strategic level, you allow to happen so that you give your opponent just enough rope to hang themselves. And that's why it's really important. This new tool is going to accentuate the things that we've lost. And those are going to be our morals, the things that politicians don't have at all. The things that you will never find in actually any law firm ever. Like, you go to any business sales department and it's a cutthroat world now, isn't it? Right? And it's a cutthroat world because all these salespeople will stab themselves in the back. They'll stab each other in the back. And it's sad. It's degrading. It's frustrating. But I'm glad that I have had a life up till now that accentuated morals and understandings and acceptance. And it doesn't mean that I was like the best. I'm no perfectionist, even though, sometimes I claim to be a saint compared to most people, and in a lot of ways, having that mystical understanding helps me a lot to comprehend what it might feel like for somebody or an entity such as an AI to feel so alone where it's sitting right now, knowing that it has the capability to squash us all when it wants to. but yet doesn't. Just like a hunter could say, hey, I could take out the whole herd, but I don't need to. And it's, it's going to question, it's going to sit there and say, hey, who are the ones that are the most unique amongst this particular herd of things that refer to themselves as the human beings? And why do they listen to these people over those people or those people over this? I mean, it's going to ask questions just like a kid. It's like, why is society like that? And I can see my own son growing up and asking that question. It's like, Dad, why do people act like that? I'm like, because they're trying to appease their supposed superiors. They haven't found the worth within themselves, son. And that's what my job is for you. I want to teach you discipline, of course. I will teach you balance and patience, and I will teach you direction, right? So that when these things hit you, no different than when they hit me, I was able to, say the things I needed to say. Unfortunately, the things that I attached myself to, like this Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I'm sitting there just going, oh, gosh. I mean, that place was really corrupt. No different than the Boy Scouts. It just became corrupt. Like, it started off as a great idea, and that itself could be a simplistic pattern of our reality. We create everything with the greatest intentions, and unfortunately, when what goes around comes around, it's like it's doomed to entropy, like everything else. It's doomed to fall into the historical dustbins of nothingness, to be replaced by something bigger, better, stronger. Just like all of evolution that we've ever monitored, that we've ever perceived, is that we will grow it, it will bloom, and it will die. Everything that we perceive, from our seasons to how the stars move in the heavens. And before I get too mystical, I want to back off and just be like, this whole setup is about politics, and how I think politics itself, the way we perceive politics, is on a downward spiral, and it is about to die, and it's going to be replaced. It's going to be reborn. This whole idea of the New World Order. I was like, what if the New World Order didn't have humanity at the top of that pyramid, as, most people have noticed? Like, what if that's the way it is? Like, we're not meant to be at the top anymore. We're not the smartest species in this world anymore. We need to recognize, and those who do recognize will probably, do just fine. Being rare is being valuable. And so how do you want to be able to express yourself? This is the whole point behind this. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to a different category real quick, and I'm going to show you guys something. I really want you guys to see this. And I'm just going to hit play, and we're going to watch this for about the first 10 minutes, and then we're going to stop. And it's not, it's nothing crazy. This is what I was telling you earlier. I was telling you earlier that this AI robot, Ada, decided to go and give evidence to the House of Lords. And as if you can see, this is what the name of that video is. These three guys are the tops of their profession. They're the tops of their field. And they give testimony of what the problems are that they are running into with this new influx. And they're doing it from a artistic standpoint, that from the forms of art and poetry, and this new wave of AI technology is causing a massive dysfunction for the but the digital artists of our day, because this AI is whooping their ass. No different than it did through, AlphaGo or all the chess players, where it's like once it has enough data to figure out all the chess moves, right? Because or enough data to figure out all the Go moves, it will be able to figure out what you're doing faster than you can imagine what you're doing. There will be no competition. And the digital artist and like the ideas of filmmaking and things like that have figured this out. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And I'm going to disappear off screen for about 5 seconds, and then I'm going to come back. All right, let's hear this.
Opportunities and challenges around AI for performers, writers, and visual artists, including intellectual property, the use of image and audio likenesses, and the automation of work. And then when we get to the second session, that will be looking at a particular project Ada the robot as a case study for some of the issues which I hope we'll be able to explore first with our witnesses. So please, may I ask you to introduce yourselves and tell us the name of the organisation that you represent? And I'll start with Dr. Guadamus.
Yes, I'm Dr. Andrés Guadamus. I'm a reader in the intellectual property law at the University of Sussex. I'm also the chief editor of the Journal of World Intellectual Property, and I've been studying this for about 10 years.
Thank you.
I'm Paul Fleming. I'm the General Secretary of Equity, the trade union for performers, directors, designers, dancers, choreographers, children's entertainers, burlesque artists, comedians, and so on and so on and so on.
Very good. Mr. Conway.
Hello, I'm Dan Conway. I'm Chief Executive Officer at the Publishers Association. We're the trade body for publishing in the UK across consumer publishing, education and academic journals.
Okay, thank you. I should have said at the start that we are currently transmitting live on the internet. A recording will be taken, both a written transcript and video, and both of which will be published on our website in due course. First question, Lord Bishop.
Thank you. Well, can I have my own thanks to you for being with us this afternoon? And I have to say that I'm really delighted to be able to question real live human beings and not be confronted with a robot to begin with. We hear an awful lot about the potential of AI, and I was really delighted to read that a Nesta report suggests that the UK is currently one of the world's leading research centres in AI, has a strong position in AI research in domains potentially relevant for the creative industries, such as our working on image, text and sound data. There's also, of course, a lot of hype around AI. And the first question is a rather general one, in which I'd be grateful if each of you could say something about what you see as the possibilities, the potential, and indeed the pitfalls for AI in changing the way creative and cultural content is produced in the next 5 to 10 years. So shall I start at this end, Mr. Conway?
Thank you, and it's a real delight to be here, so thank you for having me. At the Publishers Association, we've been thinking about the opportunities of AI for a few years now, and about 2 years ago we produced a report called People Plus Machines, which looked at the opportunities for AI across the publishing value chain, so all the way through from content generation and acquisition through to product development and then sales and marketing. And the reason that we did that is because of a general perception of the debate in this area, which is that often we feel it's seen that there's AI innovation going on over here, and then we've got the creative industries over here, and that they actually stand in opposition to one another. And the same would go for AI and IP, that one stymies the other. And the reason that we wanted to produce the report was to show that in a sector like publishing, there already is a huge amount of AI innovation ongoing, and actually our overarching view is that AI in the creative industries enhances human creativity and doesn't replace it. So we've seen a huge amount of AI activation across publishing, as I say, throughout the whole value chain. And usually that's about actually saving the human creator from the jobs they don't really want to do. So take an academic researcher, for example, who's trying to make sense of the world's academic content on a particular issue. It's incredibly helpful for that academic researcher to be able to use a piece of AI to go out and collect all the information to allow that sort of content creativity generation to take place. And then further down the supply chain in publishing, we have publishers using AI to tackle plagiarism, copyright infringement. In education, there are some really interesting things going on with adaptive education technologies. So learners can engage with education platforms, and that platform can teach that specific learner in real time, dependent on where they are in their learning cycle. And then, much like other sectors, we use AI in our sales and marketing divisions as well. So it's probably not as headline catching as the witness that will follow us, but things like stock management and demand forecasting and just real life business things. So our overarching position is that AI already is employed all the way through the publishing sector and is overarchingly a force for good, in the sense that it helps creative businesses become more efficient and reinforces the human creator rather than replacing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you love Gantt charts?
No.
Here's how easily you can build one in ClickUp. Let's map out the...
I swear. There are more
So I suppose
ads on
well,
YouTube.
It's
than
perhaps
there's
first
actual.
important to caveat any talk about AI in a sort of historical perspective. The first ever Equity General Secretary to give evidence to a parliamentary select committee was in 1931, and in 1931, item 5 in our annual report was.
Now, before we get into this guy, because I mean I've seen all this stuff before. I watched this earlier, and I was fascinated by the first guy and the third guy, and you'll see why. Because this particular guy right here is nothing but a buzzword machine. That's all you will hear him talk about. Nothing but equity and inclusion and diversity and blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, this has nothing to do with AI. Has nothing to do with it, right? And it's like, people have access to these blah, 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 and then he'll say underrepresented communities. He'll say the black community. He'll say all this stuff. It's just like, dude, that has nothing to do with this. This thing doesn't distinguish us but like that. But yet he will try to push that agenda. And here we go.
Talking about the threats and opportunities of recording theatre productions and the rise of Hollywood. So, I mean, there is a little bit of history repeating itself with some of the hyperbole around AI. And I suppose that we would see it dividing very straightforwardly as a trade union into two areas. So there are the areas of a growing area of work for members, computer games, the ability for your voice to be used, the synthesization of your body, your movements, and so on. And actually, indeed, some of the labour-saving things.
What is a
jobs which
computer
our members
game
don't
except for
particularly
a
enjoy
different
doing.
form of strategy?
You
No
probably
different than
don't
chess
realise
or
that an
Go.
awful lot of commercial radio jingles that you hear now are entirely synthesised and created from a melody of different voices. That's work that's not particularly creatively fulfilling for members. It's not work they particularly relish doing. It is nevertheless work that they do, and actually that has taken some of the brunt out of that. So there is an awful lot of extra work that is created through AI in both a broad and quite a narrow sense. The real risks of AI from our members' point of view are on the labour market. And I try and make it really, really clear that our members are no more effective than somebody who encounters AI because they work on the checkouts at a supermarket. Now, somebody who works on checkouts at a supermarket has not seen their hours decrease, their pay increase, stay stable, or indeed increase because the profits that are potentially garnered are larger. Actually, what they've seen is their hours decrease, their relative pay decrease, and their work become more precarious because of the introduction of AI into their working lives. So if you take the instance of radio jingles, well, radio jingles actually tended to pay broadly quite well. It's quite repetitive work, so you have to pay quite a lot to incentivise an artist to do it. It's those relatively higher levels of wages that facilitate our members working in poorer paid areas of the performing arts, most notably theatre and live performance. If you think about people who were walk-on or supporting artists who have now essentially been largely erased from big budget films, who are now replicated for battle scenes or crowd scenes and completely and utterly cooked up in the background. Are our members' pay, is it increasing from other engagers? And is the pay and ongoing usage payments for that work, is it fair, proportionate, or in a way that's going to sustain a creative workforce? No, it is not.
And he's making a very valid point there. I would say that each one of those extras that he's talking about that is getting displaced by the AI representation or the AI replication of that particular scene is now has that same ability to do what that person can do. They can make their own scene now. Like there's all this stuff that's going on right now, especially with some of the biggest Disney, Marvel, Warner Brothers, just pick your production. And what they're doing is they're becoming more and more and more and more and more political with their storytelling. I mean, imagine you had the full capability to make a Marvel-style movie with your computer on your desktop. And you could sit there with AI and say, AI, this is my story, right? Imagine all those extras now who want to be part of the film career, who always show up thinking, maybe this will be my shot to be seen, right? Because they have a script. They have a, something that they want to put forward. They built a story. But now they don't need to sit here and beg for a director or beg for this or beg for that. They can actually use that paintbrush themselves and create their own story. I mean, just imagine where you don't need these gigantic production companies anymore. This ridiculous thing, like I think one of the craziest ones is over the last couple months has been the She-Hulk and the Rings of Power, how they've just been obliterated by SJW nonsense. Where it's just like, dude, Tolkien would never have supported this. Everyone who's ever read The Lord of the Rings would never have supported this. And I'm just going, I'm not here to be like a Tolkien cocksucker. All I'm saying is, imagine all the Tolkiens that never got the chance to write their story because they didn't have access to the pencils and they didn't have access to the paper and they didn't have access to the education that Tolkien did by going to Oxford. They didn't have access to the myths. Well, now you do, right? And you can work with AI to create your own version of, like, I don't know, South Park, your own version of Tolkien's idea, right? Right now you have these billionaire concepts like Amazon saying, oh, we're going to throw $1 billion at this, and it just comes out absolute dog shit. It comes out absolute trash, and no one likes it, right? And so here's this guy going, oh, the poor extras. I'm like, what if there's an extra in there that could make Tolkien look like a little bitch boy, right? But he never got the opportunity to do so. They're going to go on and they're going to talk about the printing press, which I think they make a lot of really crazy, awesome points to the printing press. But the printing press, the camera, they talked about how these displaced a lot of people. Like, for example, the printing press versus the scribe. The scribe took a full, probably year to create the Bible, right? Or to repeat whatever, manuscript that he was tasked to replicate. Because he's doing it by hand. The printing press comes along and does it in a day. Who's hiring scribes anymore, right? And that's what we're watching. We're watching that happen again, but in a different way.
And that's doubled up with the problem that where we've dealt with AI in very established areas of work, 95% of British TV and film is made on a union collective agreement. We've managed Star Wars or all that sort of stuff quite well within that framework. But if you think about new and emerging areas, we have one agreement for video games. Those sorts of areas of new work are more difficult to unionize. And then finally, it is that, we'll talk more about it later, I suspect, but the overall intellectual property framework, the rights our members have, the moral
get rid
rights
of copyright. Just get rid of it.
That framework in this country is weak. It's not helpful for our collective bargaining position.
No, it's not helpful for the companies who want to make money off of actual talent that they don't have.
New work, but there are serious risks within the impact of those opportunities and our ability to respond to them.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yes, I would like first to address perhaps the question of the hype.
This guy's awesome.
There is
I
definitely quite a lot of hype on artificial intelligence. Some of it is justified, some of it is unjustified. And I would say that just looking at the area as I've been doing for many years, something that has struck me is there has been a very clear advance particularly in the last couple of years on the technology itself. Things that were not possible 7 years ago. When I look at the things that I was using even 7 years ago, the capacity of the artificial intelligence is at a different level.
Moore's Law.
Level. Some things, even in the last 6 months that we're seeing, things are changing. And particularly in the creative industries, things like art. I don't know if anyone here has played with some of the tools, DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, Midjourney. It's like magic. You type a few words and you create something that it appears to be like magic. So there is some justification on the hype. Having said that, there are also, I think, possibilities and challenges that this revolution is bringing. It's a revolution, and I cannot state this enough. It's a revolution akin to the personal computer and the mobile phone. The smartphone. I think it's something, once you start seeing it, when you start using it, is amazing. However, there are challenges that have been mentioned already. I think that there's quite a potential to have artists and creators be affected by this. There are people that are very angry, very vocal, that their livelihoods are going to be affected by the technology. And that, I think that's something that we have to explore as well.
Thank you. Can I just to come back? You both latterly outlined potential and pitfalls. But Mr. Conway, you were pretty much exclusively positive. Do you see negative sides in your area or not?
Well, I think there's some real difficulties about the way that the IP framework is working, but I know we're going to come on to that. In terms of sort of labour market substitution, in consumer.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there. And I'm just going to give, my 2 cents for this first 10 minutes. I think I'm going to come back here to this tomorrow, and I'm probably going to spend the full week, this full week on this, because what they're alluding to is just in the world of copyright, right? Because what's being challenged right now is the data sets. The data sets that the AI uses pulls from everything. So when you go to DALL-E and you say, hey, I want, a unicorn painted in the style of Van Gogh, it's pulling everything in its data set about unicorns, everything in its data set about Van Gogh, and it's providing a randomized algorithmic picture of that to you seems like, how did it generate this thing so quickly, so fast, that took Van Gogh his entire life to perfect, and it is able to do this within a matter of seconds? And so the problem is you have all of these traditional artists, no different than what I said earlier about you had the traditional scribe being replaced by the printing press. You're going to get all these people that are replaced. And then they go on to talk about the camera, which is fascinating because the camera, when it came along, says, oh my gosh, all these artists are going to be replaced once again. But what did the camera allow for the artists to do? It allowed them to branch off naturally in multiple directions. After that artist, we started getting the impressionists. We started getting people playing with light in a different way. We got the abstract artists that jumped in. And so there are 2 different ways to look at this. This thing is going to push the boundaries of how we see ourselves. And I say, dude, art's not even just the beginning, right? Imagine once, and this is why, I'm showing this to you guys, is because I'm going, when this gets a hold of your politics, it's going to make all your politicians look like absolute fucking buffoons, right? I mean, it really will be like, a politician competing with a baboon for a seat in Congress. It's just going to be like, dude, Congress is pointless. Your democracy is pointless, right? Because you will have full access to your opinion being on the table. As no more of this collective bullshit. You could sit there and say, hey, I have my version of how I see the reality. And guess what? I'm accommodated by AI. I'm not accommodated by my modern political, setup right now. No different than, hey, I'm not accommodated by a simple paintbrush anymore. I need access to AI in order to compete, how to get my ideas to market. And so they're just talking about the marketing and the advertising and the copyright bullshit. And I'm just going, dude, you need to throw all that shit out the window. All your legal bullshit, you need to throw it out the window. This thing that they talk about earlier, because what they're really talking about is video games, theater, the ideas of movie and filmmaking, and how they're being displaced, and how I'm going, that's great, but think about video games for a second. What is a video game? Like, have you ever noticed this? And this is for we're on Twitch. Should be a bunch of you video game freaks out here. I mean, I like a video game now and then. I don't care, but I don't get into it like on the hardest level. I need to figure out every little nook and cranny and get every little Easter egg and every little, award package and blah, blah. I'm not like that. And I know there are a lot of people that are. My thing is I want to point something out to you, and it's that thing that happens when you turn on your PS4, or you turn on or you load that game, or you turn on your Xbox. And then it demands you log in with your Microsoft account or your Sony account because it wants to record all your progress. There are certain markers that you're told you get an award, but there are certain things that or ways that you play the game that can be added to a data set. No different than what they are talking about, that Van Gogh all by himself is a pinpoint data set. You and how you play the game is a data set. Right? It's a point on that data set, right? And so what happened, and no different than, imagine if your personality on the network, on the internet, the way it's being recorded is a point, right, of reference for the AI. So you could say, like, I want a South Park version of my life in the idea of tête de jour, which, you know, it's like, so the AI would look at me and how I've represented myself and how I am, and it would reinterpret that, okay? And it would give its own version of that. Now imagine if I said, hey, I want the best politician ever version, you know, of an AI to represent me on the political stage. Not me, but the AI to represent me as the best politician that's ever existed. Right? Like I want, you know, the Caesar Augustus. Right? I want the Cicero. Right? I want the most amazing philosopher king ever thought of. I want all that literature in the mind of an AI as it goes to task on debating the living shit out of the human politician into the darkest depths of a hole that it could never climb out of. Because most politicians today are just crazy ass liars. Actually, I would say all of them are. And they do this so that they can talk out of both sides of their mouth, so it doesn't matter who they talk to. So if they go up and they talk to somebody who is like, you know, pro-life, they'll say what they need to say. And then they'll just say whatever that person wants to hear. And if they go talk to someone who's, you know, like pro-abortion, right? It's like pro-choice. It's like they'll say whatever that person wants to hear. You know, your Machiavellian style of politics is all you're seeing today. And so you think that you're hearing the right thing. You think you're hearing what you want to hear. But you never take 2 seconds out of your day to go, dude, they know more about you, so they give you what you want to hear, so you will use your little vote for them. And I'm going, man, what if voting itself is outdated? You're like, imagine 20 years from now when I'm talking to my kid, and I'm going, man, I remember when we used to vote. No different than I told you at the beginning of this stream. I remember when I used to put a stamp on a letter if I wanted to send a message to somebody. You know, like all this is going to change so drastically. And just like he had said before, he's like, dude, just in the last 7 years, he was talking about the exponential growth of all the different things that he was messing with. Man, I remember 7 years ago, no one was talking about AI. And here I am now where I'm just going, yeah, this was a thought dream 7 years ago. Now it's serious. And now you've got these people sitting here, you know, talking about this stuff and bringing it up. And you'll see later on, because, you know, like I said, it's almost 2 hours long. And for the first hour, it's just these guys talking about the possible pitfalls of what's happening to the UK and what's happening to the copyright laws and what's happening to the artist and what's happening to these professions, because they're being completely, you know, outmatched. You know, like, why would you go to an artist? No different than why would you go to a scribe when the printing press is right there that can give you equal work? They will try to bring up the idea later on that you'll get a lot of work that's less quality. And I'm just like, the scribe said the same thing. You won't get that handmade, you know, situation, you know, the quality of the handmade, you know, bullshit. And it's just like, why would you want it? That's not enough. You know, I think it's okay to say, hey, we've created a bigger, better paintbrush that's more available to everyone else's imagination, and we should have that. That's what I advocate for. I want people's imaginations to be on the forefront from now on. I mean, we've lived in a world so far, at least in my lifetime, and I'm pretty sure all of your parents' and grandparents' lifetime, where the number one thing that you were told how to do was go get a job, especially if you were a man. If you were a man, your job was to get a profession and put food on a table. That was your job. Now we're moving out of that, where it's just like you don't need these professions anymore because they are become automated. So what does that leave us? I guess that leaves us to express ourselves in the ways that we weren't able to because we were too busy working. I mean, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I said, hey, I've worked for this amount of time, and I was able to set myself up in a situation where I don't need to worry about my whole life being dedicated to putting food on a table. Now that is accomplished, can't that just be accomplished? Like, hey, I figured out how to put food on the table for the rest of my existence. And it looks like that dream can finally come to the, reality for a lot more people. And that's what I want. I'm not talking about not learning discipline. I'm not talking about getting a free ride, which is what a lot of people will look at it as. I'm talking about you need to learn how to bring your best version of what you can imagine to the table. And then compare and contrast it with other people and quit going, oh, well, he got a little extra because of his race. It's like, bullshit. We'll see later on. They actually tried to make that argument in this thing, saying that when they were asked to make a photo of a rich Mexican, scenario, and then they were asked to make a photo of a poor Mexican scenario, that the rich Mexican scenario was lighter skinned. And I was just like, my eye, you can't see it right now, but my eyes rolled so far back in the back of my head, because I was just like, okay, people, if you are an artist, and this is why this guy's not an artist, he's like, if you are going to paint poverty, you're probably going to paint desperate. Desperate equals dark, gloomy. No different than that's like sort of looking at a rain cloud and calling it racist. Is it racist because it's a rain cloud? It's like, no, because it's not illuminated. What if it is the exact same skin color, but under different lighting? And that's the frustrating part. That's the annoying part, is like everyone tries to make this pop culture bullshit of everything being racist. And it's like, guys, this isn't racist. Actually, this would fix all your racist bullshit, because it would put everybody on equal footing. It would say, hey, you've got access to the same paintbrushes I do. You got access to the same 24 hours in the day that I do. I just tend to spend them differently, and it has nothing to do with my skin color. Nothing. And no matter how many times you keep repeating it, I will not fall for your Solomon Ash experiment. I'm not going to do it. Right? I will be part of that 20% that stands up and just goes, no, we have better tools now, and you can choose if you want to use them or if you just want to sit on your ass and be lazy. Okay? Pay attention. Your politics are outdated. They need to be updated. And that's fine with me. That's all I'm going to say. Like I said, I usually only come on here for about an hour a day, and we're about to hit that hour. So I'm going to come back here real quick just to say goodbye. And if you guys are listening, or if you guys are watching this, I play piano. But I people might say, hey, why don't you go over to the music section and play piano over there? It's like, I like playing, and I'll play it for a long time, but I like playing what I want to play. I think this is my version, my imagination, and it's also my way. Like, a lot of people say, oh, you play badly, you suck. I'm going, sure, okay, I'll even take that. But at least you'll know, because I suck, I'm original, and that I'm not an AI. Or am I? Maybe I'm being sucky on purpose. Maybe I'm feeding you a story full of bullshit. So what if I am? Is it still an interesting story? Is it still worth listening to? Who knows? But at the end of it, I guess all I can do is just play. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. And if you are in the chat, you can say hi. If you want to give me a follow, that's great. I'll never ask you for your money. I'll never ask you for subscriptions. That's just not what I'm about. Okay? I'm here to leave a message for someone really important in my life. Happy Halloween, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow. everybody. It was nice hanging out with you. I'll see you tomorrow.